Okay, guys, we're finally going to start playing the English opening, and I know that a lot of you have been asking for this for a long time, so let's try to do it the right way. Now, before we get into it, let me tell you more or less how we're going to conduct this lesson. Number one, I want to tell you why and how I added this opening to my repertoire, why I think you should add it as well at this point in the course, and through the games of great players like Botvinnik, Carlsen, some ordinary games played by me, I want to show you everything you need to start playing this opening by the end of this lesson. And towards the end, of course, I want to cover some of the typical questions that you might have, like what if they do this, what if they do that? And if I have time, I also want to play a Blitz game for you to see it in action. So let's get started, guys. The reason why I decided to play this opening, it actually started when I was back in Cuba. I was driving one of these, I was selling Cuban cigars, and then one day I met this guy and he asked me, well, actually, that's a wrong story. That's for another day. Nah, guys, seriously. I told you on lesson 100 that the first time I went to a chess academy, I was already 12 years old. So the coach there thought I was a little bit too old and he didn't really want to invest time in me. But still, I did stick around. I learned some systems. I learned a lot from other kids. And one of those kids used to play the Vienna exactly the way we learned it on lesson number 34. And I know that you might be like, okay, go straight to the point. That has nothing to do with the English, but guys, it does. If I show you quickly, let me go all the way back. Let me go here. At the beginning, I used to play as the white pieces e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and I'll play the Scotch opening, which I liked a lot. But then this kid, I saw him play his favorite openings, which was the Vienna setup with this fianchetto variation. And guys, exactly like I taught it to you on lesson 34. Now, from here, many times he'll get something like this, right? So let's say bishop b4, knight g2, e2, castle, castle. And then at this point, his middle game plan was typically doing h3, followed by f4. And to me, this pawn storm was very attractive because you know that I like to play the peers, the King's Indian defense as the black pieces. And this pawn storm is very attractive to me as a King's Indian defense player. So the moment I saw him doing this, I'm like, I want to try it. I want to play it. And guys, the way it'll go, it'll be something like f5, and then he goes g4, g5. Very, very nice. Of course, they could play it open, but we've already covered that. Let me tell you how I went from this to the actual English opening. Well, if you pay attention to this setup, if you put this pawn on c4, guys, this is going to be the English opening. And that's how it was so easy for me to transition from this to the English opening. And the very first game that I reviewed was actually this game by Botvinnik. And if I go back, you're going to see that they go the fianchetto, and then immediately Botvinnik liked to play this e4. So guys, you know off the bat, the variation that we're going to cover is going to be this with the Botvinnik triangle. If you already know that you don't like it, don't even bother, because that's what this lesson is going to be about. There are many other variations, but today we're focusing on this one. Now, another game that I want to show you is this one played by Magnus Carlsen. And as you can see here, his opponent played bishop b4, and this is Levon Aronian. And then we have another game here that I want to show you quickly, played by Grandmaster Simon Williams, right? And the other games are the ordinary games that I told you guys. This is me, you see playing, this is probably one of the live streams, a 1500 player, another one playing an 1800 player, a 2200 player, for you to see it in everyday game. So here we have Botvinnik using his variation, knight c3, and guys, this is the way that I like to start. c4, knight c3, fianchetto on the king side. This to me has always been the English opening, right? So then we got e4 played by Botvinnik. I like to do personally d3 first, and then I do e4. Now the move order, not a big deal. So he decided to do e4, d6, and then knight g2, e2. Now knight g2, e2, among many other things, it is going to allow us to do f4 faster. So e5, castle, knight b2, d7, and then pawn to d3. At this point, we got knight c5, and right after, we're going to go with f4. Another thing that I like to play is h3, just taking care of that g4 square. With f4, I always found it a little bit annoying to have this bishop on g4, even the knight sometimes. So I learned to just do h3. Do you have to do it? Completely up to you. Try it without h3, and then you decide, okay? So he decided to do f4. His opponent went c6, trying to open up the center. If you're being attacked on the flank, you need to open up the center. So c6, then h3, you see he did it later. Move order, not a big deal. And after knight e6, we got finally pawn to f5. This is what we're looking for. The center is locked. We are okay pushing these pawns forward. So f5 comes with a tempo. Knight goes to d4. We don't really care because that knight is not going to be doing much. One thing that I like to do is to simply take, and then this pawn is not going to do anything. I go knight e2. The bishop is even blocked by its own pawn. But Botvinnik is the one who knows. He decided not to take right now. He went g4, knight e8. One thing that I used to do a lot against lower rated opponents or less experienced opponents, I really enjoy doing g5. This is what we're looking for, right? If they did something bad like queen c7, you go g5, f6, and guys, this bishop is not going to play ever again. I even had games where I'll trade all of the pieces and then I'll leave him with that bishop and I have my bishop free to attack and do things. This bishop would be buried on h8. So, of course, most people are not going to let you do it, but if you're playing anyone below 1800, they might just fall for it. Of course, here we have g4, knight e8, and then bishop e3, fully developed. And after pawn to a6, we got queen to d2. One thing that you're going to see in my ordinary games is that many times I did queen e1 to transfer the queen over. The engine didn't like it, so that's a note that I made for myself. Now, queen d2, b5, and now bishop g5, bishop f6, bishop takes, knight takes, and the knight goes back to e2. You see the same ideas that I'm telling you, but he used them at a different timing. And this is the critical thing, finding the right timing to do these plans. So queen b6, then pawn takes, followed by queen h6. Guys, this is it. Game is pretty much over after bishop d7, pawn g5, the knight goes to h5, and then of course we want to do f6 followed by checkmate. We need the knight gone. So knight f4, the knight doesn't want to be traded, but after f6 the game is over. Going to e6, we take it followed by checkmate. Going to e8, we have this plan of h4, h5, or even the more powerful move, knight takes g6, and the game is over. If they take with the h pawn, rook f4, rook h4, and we also have talked about this rook lift, rook rollover so many times. If this is not important, but if they had taken here with the f pawn, you could even do f7. They take queen h7. The game, guys, is just pretty much over. And again, maybe to you this is not that attractive, but to me, being a King and defense player, it was great. But you gotta know, guys, many people as the black pieces simply don't know how to handle this. So you get a very comfortable game where your opponent many times don't know how to handle it. And one thing that we know from the King and defense lessons is that if at any point they advance pawns, they only create weaknesses. So that's something else to your favor. So this is the very first game that I wanted to show you. And don't worry if it looks like a lot, because you're going to see it over and over and over in every single game that I'm going to show you. Now, if we go to this other game, this one was played by Grandmaster Simon Williams. Let me actually go from the very beginning. He actually went the same thing, fianchetto on the king side, but then he went e4 right away. Doesn't really matter. We got knight g to e2, knight c6, castle, castle, and now f4. He did not even take the time to do d3. Again, I like to do d3, but f4, I guess, is perfectly fine, right? So bishop e6. Now we have to take care of that pawn. You could do d3, like I said, or you could do what he did, which is knight d5. Now, one thing, that d5 square is ours. It is in black's territory, but we have so many pieces controlling it. So knight d5 makes perfect sense. They went knight e8, and now f5. The same signature move that you're going to see over and over and over. So bishop goes back to d7. They don't want to open up the king. And now we go pawn to d3. No rush. We already made contact. We gained space. So f6, then bishop e3, just getting developed and getting our attack more organized. So knight e7, we go knight takes. Anyways, if we don't take, guys, they're ready to do c6. So we take, followed by queen d2. Pay attention to this. You're going to see in my ordinary games again that I used to do queen e1, which I don't know why. But anyhow, well, I know why, but I'll tell you later. So g5, look, this is something that your opponent could try to do. We're ready to do bishop h6 and everything else. So they're going to try to block everything, seal the king side so that you cannot get in. But now we got g4, and you know we're going to try to open up the h file. So rook f7, h4, we don't care if they take, the pawn is not going to go anywhere. Our rook is going to come over, rook lift, rook roll over, and collect the pawn, right? So h6, we take, taking with the f pawn, forget about it. That's going to be a protected pass pawn. So instead, They take with the h pawn, and now we get to use the h file. I know both players could use it, but the white pieces are in better disposition to do so. So king f2, getting out the way. And guys, notice how my king is not, we're not concerned about the king because the center is locked. So rook h1, knight c7, we double up the rooks, and now this king is trying to escape. But it's a little bit too late. We keep bringing pieces to the king side. And now, of course, we do not want to trade pieces. We need pieces to attack. So after rook h8, we simply do knight h5, avoiding the simplification and bringing more pieces to attack that king. So we got bishop a6. And guys, here the white pieces missed a tactic, believe it or not, and this is very important. If you're going to play these sharp variations, you need to be good with tactics. Of course, the white pieces are already in a very good position, but still, feel free to pause the video and see if you can come up with the best move for the white pieces. Now, here they decided to do pawn to d4, but the better move was knight takes f6, followed by rook takes and bishop g5. So if something like this, we take, and then bishop g5 with a fork, pick up the material, right? So instead, you're going to see that they did it later. So d4, c5, and look, this is something that I wanted to point out. Many times we get focused on the king side, that happened to me so much. And many times you just need to remember that you could also put pressure on the queen side, in the center. And we have talked about it. We talked about the principle of the second weakness. So d4, take, and now knight f6 finally came in, and the game is pretty much over. So they took on f5, we take, rook d8, just to show you the remaining of the game. And after knight takes queen, rook takes queen, we get the rook, and the black pieces decided to resign. Now here you saw the same thing as in Botvinnik's game, guys. So the quick setup with the Botvinnik triangle, then the expansion on the king side, and open lines to attack that king. So if I go back, f4, eventually they got to do d3, so this is the same thing, and just that pawn storm to continue to open up their king and attack. Of course, you could play the English opening in other ways, and you're going to see like this game where Magnus Carlsen used it, his opponent played bishop b4, and it got a little bit different. Now, before we go into this gameplay by Magnus, let me show you some of my some of my ordinary games. And I'm going to start, and I know it's going to be annoying to some of you, but I'm going to start with the games where I played the Vienna, just for you to see how I went from this transitioning into the actual English. So guys, very simple. This is the first one I wanted to show you because here they did not close the center. Instead, they did d5. So I took, and this is something that to me was okay. If they take, I take back. Again, if I'm playing the English, this pawn would be over here on c4. But now all I know is that I get a semi-open file along with my bishop, very attractive. And you're going to see here how my opponent goes knight c6, knight e2. The engine marked it as a mistake. Now, why is that? What is it that I missed? Okay, the engine liked knight f3 better. So again, I'm not doing the best moves, but I'm staying in my element. So knight e2, mistake, bishop g4 blunder, castle, mistake. Look at this. They wanted me to do rook b1 instead, which is what I did after h3, send the bishop back, and then I did rook b1 using my semi-open file. So very ordinary game, just working with what I could do. And then after rook b8, this is a trick that I knew from before. Tactics time, guys. Feel free to pause the video, see if you can find it. So with this, I knew that I could do rook takes b7, brilliant move, and then bishop takes c6, and I collect the material. So I wanted to show you this one for you to see that even if they don't close the center, you could still play in different ways on the queen side. Now, next game, I'm playing again the Vienna with the fianchetto, and h3, king h2, very important, we've talked about this, then f4. King h2 was necessary because the bishop is on c5, so that's something I know to do when the bishop is on c5, right? So f4, they took, I took with the pawn. We learned about this on lesson number 91 again, but you could of course take with the knight, with the bishop. I took, this bishop is now acting as a pawn, defending the king, and then d4, d5, I just got a fork right there. Guys, very simple. This is a 2200 player. If I go to the next one, the same setup, I go h3, the bishop is on c5, well, then I'm going to do g4, followed by f4, and this time we're playing a 2364. And again, it's not that I'm trying to brag or anything like this, but for you guys to see how these little systems, they work. And many times your opponents, they have no clue where you're playing, right? So knight d4, with inaccuracies and mistakes, I'm playing my game. expanding on the king side. This is the only thing that I know. And now queen b3. Look, this is a blunder. I should have done g5 according to the engine, but hey. Uh, so I just went rook f1, just focused on the king side. And then after f6, I want to get away from this diagonal, so I moved. They took the knight. I'm happy with that. But now we simply go g5. The pawn is pinned, and after queen e7, g6. Guys, at this point we have pawn takes pawn. Big mistake. I had bishop d5, didn't see it because I was focused. I played mechanically. Well, didn't see it because my tactics are bad, but I also was already set to do queen d1 and come over to h5, right? So they took, I took. I knew they could do rook f8 or queen e6, but I didn't care because I could do queen h5 and then checkmate. So at this point, my opponent resigned. Now, with those games out of the way, and I know many of you didn't like it because it has nothing to do with the English, but guys, you're gonna see now the same thing that I did in those games. I'm doing them now with the pawn on c4. That's the main distinction. So I just went e4, e5, knight g2, e2, knight g2, e7, castle, castle, and now h3. You know what h3 is for? Getting ready to do f4, and that's exactly what I did. Look, the engine didn't like it. Indeed, the engine is saying play on the queen side, but I'm doing my thing. G4, that's okay. Blunder, and now they allowed me to do f5. So the knight goes to e7. I get to do knight d5 with a tempo. Of course, guys, this game was played, I think, in one of the live streams. I'm playing a way less experienced player, but just for you to see the idea. Now here at this point, I continue to play mechanically, just doing my g5, pawn storm, and then knight c3 was marked as an inaccuracy because I had the powerful move knight e7. Checkmate, except that they could take me, and then I take back with a fork. I missed that move, but still I continue with the other knight. Then my queen comes over to the king side, and that's all that I'm looking for. Knight g4, and then knight goes to h6. Again, ordinary game, and this is against a 1500 player. Now let's bump it up against an 1800 player. This one I know for a fact it was in one of the live streams. So I'm doing my e4 again, knight g to e2, castle, h3, f4, and now I'm going to take, just like I told you before, followed by knight e2. That's it, guys. This pawn, it doesn't offer anything to them. I'm going to continue to expand on the king side. Now look at this. The engine didn't like it. Instead, I should have done b4. This is something that I never did. I hope that you guys pay attention to it. Sometimes it pays off to just be putting pressure on the queen side, on the king side, because again, your pawn structure is aiming both ways. King side, queen side, you have space on both sides of the board. So I did f5 because that's all I knew. I'm playing mechanically. So g4, g5, trying to make it work. Knight g3, bringing pieces to the king side. And then a few moves later, after queen h5, we got pawn to g6. Now, a little bit premature. I should have done, according to the engine, again, a3. The engine didn't believe in my attack. So learned from my mistake. I did g6. My opponent made a blunder and checkmate. Again, this is a very good friend of the channel, also an 1800 player. And you see how this attack, he didn't really know how to handle it. Did I execute it perfectly? Of course not, but it's hard for our opponents. Unless you're playing at a pretty high level, it's going to be hard for people to handle this kind of attack. Now, quickly, let me go to the next game. My opponent is playing more like a King's Indian defense, and I'm going to do my thing. So knight b7, this is a 2289, d3, h3. I just like the move. Look, the engine is telling me play on the queen side, but I tried to do f4, take with the pawn. Look, they wanted me to take with the bishop. To me, it just made sense to take with the pawn. Rook e8, bishop e3, f5, always nice when it comes to the tempo. And now queen e1. This is what I was telling you before. In those games from Botvinnik and many other great players, you're going to see queen d2. For some reason, I guess it's because in many systems, like in the Bird opening, I had a lesson on it recently, or a video. Sometimes I just do queen e1 to transfer over. That's what I wanted to do here. So they took, I went queen g3, just pinning that bishop. And after they got out of the way, I took back. Guys, if you look at the evaluation, 125, this is pretty good. Queen h4, knight goes to d5, silly mistake there, and we just won material. The game is pretty much easy from this moment on. Again, 2200 player, mainly decided because of a blunder at this point, but I gotta tell you, I'll play this position against anyone. And the engine is telling us that we are indeed better. Now, last game that I want to show you before we go to Carlsen's game. This one, my opponent has the bishop on c4, I mean on c5. I just go e4. Because of that bishop, the engine wanted me to do e3. But in my head, I only know how to do one thing, which is putting the pawn on e4. Still, with that inaccuracy, it's roughly equal, right? So I go knight g2, e2, castle, castle, and after f5, look, this time they are the ones doing this to me. So I decided to just take. Something else to keep in mind. If they do f5 to you, it makes sense to simply open up the diagonal of the bishop, right? So they took. Now I'm not going to abandon my plan. I'm going to go h3, then king h2, not only to defend the pawn, but again, I really like this structure. I think is very solid, and I'm getting away from this diagonal. So rook f7, f4, pawn takes, and after bishop takes, I decided to do this time queen d2, and the engine is telling me d4 was a better move, right? So knight g6 blunder, d4, and at this point, I have the option to take two minor pieces for the rook, so that's what I did. And the game was pretty much over after this. So I took knight f4, and we got to this position where, again, it is pretty much over for the black pieces. So guys, this I know probably completely unnecessary, but I just wanted to show it to you for you to see that this system, if you do it with mistakes like you're going to because you're just getting started, just like I did, you're still going to get very good attack, very good positions. If you do it more sophisticated by reviewing games played by masters, you're definitely going to get a way better game. Now, I'm going to go back to that game that we skipped, the one played by Magnus Carlsen. And after bishop b4, he goes e4 right away. Then castle, knight g2, e2, d6, h3, all of the same moves that we already know, but he's doing it in a different move order. Bishop g2, castle, b5, and then pawn to d3. Again, this pawn is helping us both towards the king side, towards the queen side. So take, bishop c5, king h2. Look, getting away from that diagonal, and b3. No hurry, we have time. Let's just take care of their threats. So a5, knight to d5, and look, when you review master games, you're gonna see them do the same things over and over, right? So I know now that knight to d5 makes perfect sense. This is a plan that I'm going to try to do every time. So they go a4. Now bishop e3, forget about bishop g5 because they have knight g4. So instead bishop e3, and we accept the double pawns in the center. Don't forget, double pawns could be trouble towards the end game. In the middle game, especially in the center, they could be an asset because they control so many squares in the center. So knight d7, knight c3, and notice how Carlsen is playing on the queen side. Very important, that's why I chose this game, guys. But then after a few more moves, you're gonna see them making some movement on the king side. Of course, it's just trying to eliminate the knight so that they could take on c7. So rook b7, b4, rook a2. This rook could easily come over to the king side. And then all of a sudden, guys, you're going to see the queen going to h5. So you see he's putting pressure on the queen side, putting pressure on the king side. And this is something that you need to keep in mind. So queen e8, bishop f5, very straightforward checkmate. And then now after c6, big blunder, this is going to be a pin. So we take on d6 and we simply win material. Now knight f6, attacking that rook, trying to expose the king. And after a few more moves, there's a tactic here that I want to see if you guys can find it. So what was the move that Carlsen did next as the white pieces? Well, very nice move. He went rook f7, rook takes, and then bishop e6 with a fork. So there you go, guys. I know that this was extremely fast, but I really wanted to make sure that I would show you all of these games for you to have more information and to get the main ideas. Honestly, this variation, it doesn't have much more than this. Now, before I go on and play a quick blitz game, let me tell you guys, I know that a lot of you might be asking, what if they did something like, I don't know, knight f6, g3, and they go d5? Well, you take, knight takes, then you go bishop g2. If they take on c3, just like I showed you in that Vienna game, right? My rook is going to go to b1. I like to still bring my knight to f3. You don't have to do anything crazy. Let's say something like this. I'm just going to go d3, castle, knight f3, I'm going to castle, develop my bishop, I'm going to be fine. From here, just play chess, guys. Don't forget, these systems are to get you to the middle game safely, then we do play chess. So if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. I'm leaving also the links to many of these games that I used today. And now let me go on, see if we can find someone for a quick 3-2 game. Okay, so I'm gonna go play. Now the challenge is going to be finding, getting the white pieces, but let's see if we get lucky. Let me just use this to here. All right, so 3-2, and also 3-2 is not as easy to find a match as with 3 minutes, but let's give it a try. If not, we just go 3 minutes. Anyways, this is just to see the opening in practice, not middle game or end game. All right, guys, so there's no 3-2, so let me just go 3 minutes. Don't worry about time pressure or anything like that, just the opening. Oh, black pieces. Let me abort. If now we play it, but okay, I'm gonna do one more new 3 minute. If I get black, I'm gonna have to play it and then okay guys, I had to play another game as black. Hopefully, okay, now we got the white pieces and we're playing a 2400 player. We're going to do our English opening, and if they let us, oh, it looks like they're going to let us, we're going to do our setup. All right, so I'm gonna do the three. I'm not going to hurry up like these guys, like they're pros. I'm just gonna keep it cool. I know where my pieces go, and then we just play chess. All right. I castled. Now I want to do f4, f5. Like I said before, I like to do h3 first. All right, so they're not playing. I think I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna do f4 right away. So h5, a little bit aggressive. I don't think that move is so common. Okay, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna go for it. So I finally made contact, just like we talked about. And now, not only do I want to do something like g4, g5, but even bishop g5 seems very attractive because this pawn is not even here. So why not? Okay, so where are you going now? Yeah, I don't think I'm missing anything. Now, this looks like a pretty aggressive 2400. Yes, that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid of you being a pretty aggressive player, but okay, so they're going back now. Bishop g5, why not? Why not? Takes. Okay, I think I'm gonna go queen d2. Again, just learning from these guys. Remember, I almost never did queen d2. Now I'm doing it. Maybe activate the rooks. Okay, I don't think we have any kind of tactics or anything like that. So, okay, let me just go here. Now, this might be an interesting plan. Just bring the rook over, but I'm not so sure. Now, I like taking with the pawn. I'm opening up my bishop, and I'm continuing to control. Okay, I think I want to get in here. I don't know if I can make it work, but I want to get in there. So bishop takes, queen h5. So now probably they're gonna do something like rook h8. Yep. Just bringing more pieces to the attack, guys. Now, notice that we got a comfortable position. If we win or lose, that depends on how good or bad I am to capitalize on this little initiative, but we definitely have the better position here. Okay, this has to be winning, guys. This has to be winning. Now, bishop cannot take because of knight f6. And then there has to be something here. Now, queen g8 that I was concerned with before, I could take the bishop. Like even this move. Mm, okay, queen h5, they move. Oof, I cannot do that. Check. I know. Time's running. H5. Okay, I cannot think of anything better. This. Check. Move knight. All right, guys, there we go. So we couldn't. Definitely made a mistake there. We lost this one. Let me take a look with the engine before I let you go. I'm pretty sure that out of the opening we got a better position, and that's what I wanted to show you. Let's see. Let's see where things got wrong. So all of these, look, it's theory so far. We're good. Good. F4 is fine. F5 is fine. H3. All of this was good. Okay, here you should have taken the knight. Don't get concerned about queen h4. And that was 575. Oh my. All right, so hd4, queen h4, rook f3. Yep, just get the knight. When they go queen h4, rook f3. If they put us in check, in f1. Yep, mistake. Still, look, 257, guys. This is definitely better for us. Queen d2. I'm happy to see queen d2 was fine. Rook f2, take. All of this is great. Where did I mess up? I definitely messed up somewhere. Okay, this is great. Okay, knight d6. Okay, this is, I already had, well, not time pressure actually. So I should have done knight h5, knight h5, third in checkmate, third in knight f6. I did consider it. I guess this check, I didn't like it. I should have gone for it. So yeah, this was already 6 seconds left. Of course, there's nothing better here. All right, guys. So there you go. Like I told you before, what I wanted to show you is that the system, the attacking ideas, they're good. We just need to make sure that we can back it up afterwards. But of course, I'm going to trust that you've been training your tactics and everything else. And don't forget, guys, not long ago, we had a lesson on the Sicilian endgame. That endgame idea, or those endgame ideas, they're going to apply to the English as well. It's almost the same thing. The English is like the same structure as the Sicilian. It's just that we have the black pieces. So with that said, I will see you in our next lesson.